Playoffs a little bit here. The Mavs with a disappointing loss, 196 to the Oklahoma City Thunder. Had a chance to take a 3-1 lead. Now the series is tied 2-2. Luka, even though he ended up with a triple-double, really inefficient from the field, was 6 of 20 from the field. Kyrie didn't help you very much either. He ended up in single digits. That's a combo that usually is averaging around 60 points per game in the regular season. In this series, they combined to average around 37 points per game. That's got to change for the Mavs. But the biggest issue for the Mavs came back to haunt them at the free throw line. They were just horrible. I mean, they were terrible, as Charles Barkley would say, from the free throw line. 12 of 23, 52% from the free throw line. And look, in contrast to that, Oklahoma City was at 95%, damn near 96% from the free throw line. 23 or 24, only missed one free throw. The Mavs missed 11 free throws. Ultimately, you can put the game pretty much in you can put those two factors as probably the main determining factors why the Mavs lost the game. But in so many other aspects of this game, when you look at the overall box score, just looking at the matchup between the two, the Mavs actually played a really good defensive game, Patrick. They had 13 blocks, ended up with 13 blocks and 4 steals in the game. They held Oklahoma City to 34% shooting in the first 3 quarters of this game. Defensively, I thought it was a really good start for the Mavs the first half, even the first 3 quarters, that they couldn't sustain that through 4 quarters, unfortunately.
Yeah, they started off pretty well, played that defense at a high level, but in the second half just came out, really flat, came out extremely tired. They only scored 15 points in the second and the third quarter. I mean, they only allowed 22. It wasn't like either team was playing really well in that quarter. But again, 15 points for an NBA team, especially one that's as dynamic as the Mavs are in the third quarter, is just, it can tell you how beat up and tired this team was. By the end, you could see they were dragging. Luka, every time he would hit the floor, took 2 or 3 plays off and just wasn't able to get going and, just was kind of out of it. The offense late was basically either handing the ball to Luka or handing the ball to Kyrie, and one of them trying to make it. And then when they would kind of speed it back up off a rebound, they were playing a little bit faster at points, and then they could score. And that was where you would see P.J. Washington cutting or Jones cutting or one of those guys getting to the basket. But at the end of the day, you missed all those free throws, but most of them are going up short. I mean, there was one Lively had that was one of the worst free throws I've seen in a long time. But that's why they've been doing Hack a Lively to get him off the court. They started doing that a little bit, and then he hit a few free throws and pulled off. But they just overall shot terrible from the free throw line because I think they were just completely gassed. We saw him go really, really hard in game 2, and I was wondering if they'd be able to keep that energy up in game 3. They were, and then finally in game 4, it feels like it hit them. Unfortunately, they don't get a lot of time off before they got to go back out and play in Oklahoma City for game 5 because that's tomorrow. So they don't really get a long break. You'd like to have another day in there just to really rest and try and get the legs back on some of these players, but they're going to have to bounce back. And unless you can have these bench players like Tim Hardaway or Josh Green or Dante Exum step up in that role and give your guys a little bit more of a blow on that sideline, that you just need something like that because those guys did not play well. Their plus minuses were pretty bad. I'm not a huge overall believer in plus minuses. There's a lot of factors in them, but you can see trends in them a lot of times. And if someone's always a minus player, it's usually something you should look at. But game by game, it's not necessarily big. But this one, you could tell the plus minus basically really favored Oklahoma City and did not favor the Mavs bench. And so they had to play them. And you get 40 plus minutes from Kyrie and Luka, and they just look completely done by the end of the game.
Yeah, no, you're right about that. To your point, the Mavs have 4 reserves they play: Hardaway Jr., Lively, Green, and Exum. 3 of those 4, like you said, plus minus. It's a nuanced stat, so it's not necessarily black and white. But 3 of those 4 players had a minus in the plus minus. Lively was the only one that was plus in that category. You go look at the Oklahoma City Thunder. They have 5 different guys they play: Williams, Joe, Wiggins, and Wallace as their reserves. And in the plus minus category, 4 out of the 5 are plus. And only one guy, Wiggins, he was -1 in the plus minus. So the guys that do contribute as reserves for the Oklahoma City Thunder, at least based on plus minus, they're able to actually produce and actually contribute in a more positive fashion than the Mavs reserves. And if the Mavs reserves maybe were able to contribute in a more positive fashion, maybe they'd earn the trust of Jason Kidd, like you're saying, and he'd leave him out there a little bit longer.
Yeah.
Then give Luka a little bit more rest, and maybe that's how you can resolve this. You talked about that at the game too, because Tim Hardaway Jr. had a nice stretch. You talked about how he was able to command the offense while Luka got a little bit of rest.
Yeah, and he was able to go on a little run, and I think he scored 8 straight points in that game or something like that. That buys you the time, because now you're gaining ground instead of losing ground. And that's huge in those moments. And they were just, every time they pulled Luka and Kyrie out of the game, they'd start losing more and more ground. Felt they couldn't leave him out of the game. This is one of those things as a coach, sometimes you just have to trust yourself. And I think if Jason Kidd could go back, he would have sat them a little bit more. They would have played about 37 minutes, 35, 36, 37, taking their shots, going down 15 and trying to run it back late when, and honestly, Oklahoma City was dead tired too. It wasn't like anyone in Oklahoma City was blowing it up. I knew SGA had 34 points, but he took 27 shots to do it. So it wasn't like he was necessarily killing them on that end either. So I think you could have, maybe tried to take that approach. Hindsight's 2020. So it's easy for me to say now, well, you should have rested them more and they would have been fresh in the fourth quarter, but they were dead tired after halftime. So I don't know how much more you could have rested them, and it really would have mattered. I think, when your legs are just gone, when you've been playing too many days in a row and it's that time of the season and you have injuries and your legs start to, become bricks, it's just, there's nothing you can really do about it. And it felt like that was the case for pretty much both teams by the end of it. It wasn't really a ton of fun basketball to watch. The series has been a lot of fun to watch. And that it was kind of a slog there at the end. Mavs didn't deserve to really be in it, how bad they were playing in that end of the game.